This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
The cute voxel aesthetic of Skellboy carries the experience forward a long way. Just waltzing through the Cubold kingdom is enjoyable, as is the accompanying story and sound design. Skellboy sadly has enough detractions that hold it back from living up to the promise of the presentation and style, whether it is the overall plotting pace or the frequent slowdown. The charm papers over some flaws, but the result is primarily just okay, until a strong third act ends the adventure on a high note. Skellboy's story begins with chaos in the Cubold Kingdom, and you control the undead Skippy, a heroic skeleton who begins a quest across the land to stop the dreaded wizard Squaramon. The narrative is primarily cute window dressing, as the history of the world is revealed, and a cast of amusing characters encounter Skippy on his journey. Early on, everything is straightforward and guided, but the back half does have some more open-ended segments, usually involving a bigger focus on exploration. The game makes use of a fixed camera that is primarily from an isometric perspective. While camera control isn't something I longed for most of the time, the stationary camera definitely frustrated me in a few spots, specifically anything involving platforming or precise character placement. Overall, it is just hard to judge exactly where you land from this viewpoint. Skellboy's main hook involves switching body parts and weapons that change your hero's look and abilities. You start off with a plain old sword, but unlock clubs, axes, lances, wands, and variants on all of them throughout the adventure, each with their own unique touches and puzzle-solving uses. The basic skeletal head, torso, and legs just do the bare minimum, but as you progress, you can find new body parts that can increase health, protect against poison, or leave a trail of fire. A lot of the really ridiculous ones are locked behind side quests and secrets, but the entire concept works well in-game with a few caveats. A lot of gear randomly drops from enemies, which can often litter the floor with hard-to-decipher variety, sometimes due in part to the camera. It's also worth noting that while you can't change your body parts on the fly for a good chunk of the quest, you can kinda do that a little after the halfway mark. Until that point though, experimenting with body parts can be a precarious endeavor, since you might be stuck with a bad pair of feet for a long stretch of time. For the first few hours, Skellboy is achingly linear, which primarily dragged it down in two ways, both related to slowness. The ambling walking pace of Skippy can make traversal and exploration frustrating, and in concert with that, whenever you transition to a new area, the whole game encounters this incredible slowdown. For a potentially quick reference for Switch players, it reminded me a lot of the Link's Awakening remake's similar problems transitioning between areas, but in Skellboy, gameplay suffered more for me, since I ran into far more enemies during these moments. Now, the publisher Fabraz has come out and said that they are working on updates and patches to improve these performance issues, as well as some other problems that have come up. If you go to our written review, or possibly checking the description of this video that you are watching right now, there will be a link to Fabraz's Trello board that will give you updates on future Skellboy updates. Anyway, back to the written review. That's just an aside. So while the slowdown never really does go away, once the game opens up in the back half of the roughly 5 to 10 hour adventure, everything becomes a little bit clearer and there's better exploration and better access to body parts, and that's where Skellboy improves dramatically. I almost wish the whole game was made with that eye towards exploration and non-linearity, as my opinion improved a whole lot once I gained the ability to fast travel and switch body parts more easily. Skellboy has a duality to it that makes it a harder game to quantify. The visuals are adorable and fun, but technical issues really muddle gameplay. The back half features more exploration and enjoyable side quests, but the first part is slow-paced and straightforward. If you think the charm of the aesthetic can carry you through the low points, it's worth reaching the highs. But if not, then maybe this poor little Skellboy named Skippy might be better left in the ground. So that's Skellboy. It's it's a game out on Switch. Do stay tuned for updates if this is a game that piques your interest, or maybe if you were on the fence after watching this review. It looks like the publisher Fabraz and the developer Umaiki, something like that. It looks like they're going to be doing updates to the games to make some of the issues that I call out in this review better and more palpable. So that could be real cool, but as it stands right now, I mean, you just heard the review, so that's how I feel about Skellboy on day one. And thanks for reading and watching and supporting us here at NintendoWorldReport.com. Stay tuned for a little bit on more detail on our Patreon, and be sure to like, subscribe, all that jazz. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.